that. Okay. So yesterday we were talking about the process of what it looks like to confront, face, overcome the category that we call avodas habirurim specifically. We said that the Rebbe brings the example for the engagement that we have with this in tefillah, in davening. Because actually it says in the Zohar that it calls tefillah, it calls prayer, slas, shas, I always make this up, shas, slicer, shas, krava. A time of battle and a time of war. That davening is a fight. And then it compares Torah learning actually to peace. Okay, to a peaceful kind of way of engaging with God. But prayer is considered like a fight and a battle. And so that's the example that the Rebbe is bringing for how we deal with avodas habirurim in a way of a battle. By engaging with the thing, confronting it directly, and then as a result of that, elevating the spark of light of God that exists within the thing. So davening is an example of this because davening is not a physical battle, but it's almost like a spiritual, mental battle that in doing it, it's like a practice around almost. The Rebbe does not use the term, and I haven't seen it anywhere, practice, so I don't know how accurate that is, but it's a spiritual general birur that we do to our animal soul that then, in doing that, we can go out and accomplish what we want to do, the avodas habirurim that we want to do, right? So, in that analogy of the horse, you're going to, before getting on and riding it and having it, listen to you, you're going to do the work with the horse. You're going to have to do that work to make sure that you're on the same page, to make sure that you feel like a team, and that you're not, the horse wants one thing, you want the other. And that's the same thing within ourselves. We need to, in davening, convince our animal soul why Judaism is good for it. So we said that the process looks like before Shema, which is the point where we come to Hashem with both of our souls. We remind the animal soul where it comes from the angels, that in its source, the animal soul actually was totally and absolutely passionate and in love, not with itself like it is now and with the physical world, but with God. And as the angels and the animal soul descended down through all the levels, it retained its passion and its impulse and its love, but it lost sight of where that was directed. And our job is to just redirect all of that again towards God. And by reminding the animal soul that this is not something completely foreign to it, but it's where it actually comes from. It's where it started out in its source. And practically, because I was davening today and thinking, okay, it's not working so much, like telling my animal soul that I come from the angels. So I was thinking about this, that if that's not working, it's a general idea of speaking to yourself about why this is good for you, okay? And some people have a hard time with that because when you learn Chassidus, you start to think that everything needs to be so selfless and that, but isn't that selfish and isn't this all supposed to be about God? And it's like, it is supposed to be all about God, but if you want it to be all about God, you first need to make sure you're speaking to yourself. Otherwise, if it's all about God and you're lost, you're not included in the picture, that backfires, because the animal soul's there and it's not just going away. So the process of speaking to ourselves throughout our day, throughout our life, and convincing ourselves, showing ourselves how Yiddishkeit is good for us, not just spiritually good for us, but physically good for us, how it's in our best interest to be Jewish, how it's in our best interest to make the effort in this relationship with Hashem. Because when our animal soul is on board with this process, then it becomes real. Because it's not only one half of our personality, the godly side of our personality is in, and then one half of it is not. That can look different, but it usually looks toxic. It looks how people just cut off their personality, disregard who they really are, take on a whole new persona that doesn't really feel them. That is dangerous. Because either it's going to totally backfire and the animal soul is going to come rearing back at some point so strong you're going to forget all the godly stuff, or you're going to just crush your soul. It's soul crushing not to be able to truly express yourself. We have unique things that are unique to the animal soul, unique personality that comes along with that we want to be incorporating into our Yiddishkeit, into our life. And so davening is the perfect time for this. It's the time, and I don't know if any of you have noticed this, but I've definitely noticed the times where I daven, my Jewish day feels easier. a little bit. I don't know if you guys have noticed that for yourselves, but once you've overcome that like initial battle in the morning of like davening, which is very hard. I haven't really met anyone who's like, davening is the easiest thing in my Yiddishkeit. Like that's just like the part that I love the most. It's difficult. It's made to be difficult. It's a battle because our animal soul isn't interested, and our animal soul is always thinking, and to direct all of the thoughts of the animal soul towards concentrating on the prayer, to direct the time period where the animal soul is like, I could be doing everything other than this, to be able to be in that and sit in that, holy and fully. Holy, like WHO. I don't know where these words are coming from. I'm reading too much. Fully, in order to do that, we need to be really present in our davening. And that's a battle, that's a challenge. But when we've overcome that challenge in the morning, the rest of the day, the challenges that come to us, we've almost like, we know we can do it. We know we can do it because we've done it already in the morning to some extent. And our animal soul is like more on board. It's not every single time we need to make a blessing on something, or we need to do a mitzvah, we need to have some sort of self-control to avoid doing something God told us not to do, that the animal soul is like starting all the way from the beginning. And this process also we call like iskafia. Iskafia means to bend the animal soul, to slowly kind of, I think again of the horse, the idea of just like, you have this horse, you want to teach it to like stay put so you can get on it. It starts to wander away and you pull it back. And wanders away and you pull it back. It's the idea of just like bringing it back. No, you want to do that, but we're not going to do that. We're not going to do that. We're going to do this. The more you do that slowly, it literally trains the animal soul. It trains it to have self-control and enough presence to be able to actually focus on the thing that you want to be focusing on fully, not just with one part of yourself, one side of yourself, but with all sides of yourself. So the Rebbe in this next paragraph is going to describe the process of davening as an example for what it looks like where we do engage with the Avodas HaBirurim. We engage with it fully. We don't disregard the thing that needs to be elevated. We give it credit. We say that you exist, you are real, let me work with you. Which again is very different than the way that we see the Nisyonos. Because the spark of God within the animal soul and within the physical world does exist as light. It's not just a spark that exists, but there's light there, which is able to shine and come through if we engage with it and put in the work. Okay? So let us go inside, page number 2, all the way at the top. It looks like a long paragraph. 2/3 of this paragraph are going to be engaging with what we just spoke about at length outside yesterday and today. And then the last third will then tell us that this is not the case with Nisyonos, with tests, and that it looks quite different, and describe what that looks like. So let's go inside. In more detail, because remember on page 1 at the bottom we had in the bold, we had in general, very, very briefly what that looks like, the difference between Avodas HaBirurim, where we do engage, and Nisyonos, where we don't engage. Now let's get into details. What does that actually look like? So in more detail. Hine tchilas inyan Avodas HaBirurim, the beginning of this idea of serving God through elevation, through Avodas HaBirurim, hu b'shas hatfila. It begins in the time, in the morning of prayer. Kamamar, as it says in the Zohar, sha'as tzloisa sha'as krava. That prayer is a time of battle and a time of war. B'hainu, and this means de'im heyos, that if it's so, sheklalis Avodas HaBirurim, that the general Avodas HaBirurim, elevation and refining of the sparks, hi b'shas ha'achila v'shtia. We know that that's during the time of eating and drinking, during the time where we are actively engaging with the physical world to refine and elevate it. Or hishtamshus, or by utilizing b'kol ha'inyanim ha'gashmiyim, any physical thing. So even though we know that the main time for Avodas HaBirurim is when we're out in the physical world, not necessarily when we're in the shul with our prayer book, mikol makom, nevertheless, kadei sheloi zu bilvad, in order that it should not be shehadavar hagashmi lo yored es ha'adam lamata, that the physical thing should not draw the person down. Because remember, physicality, what we called klipas noiga in the past, is made up of light, but also of a shell and a covering. That covering has the power to drag the person down and to turn the physical thing not into this neutral thing that needs to be elevated, but into something completely asur, into something completely forbidden, right? Physicality, depends on the way we engage with it. If we engage with it incorrectly, it becomes bound with what we call the 3 unholy clippers. If we engage with it correctly, we elevate the spark and it becomes elevated to holiness, to kedusha. So klippa, physicality, has a power and a hold over us that if we don't overcome it, it will drag us down. So in order that we can go out into our day and engage with food and drink and all the physical things in the world in the correct way and successfully refine it, as we're going to see, we first need to daven. So in order that it does not draw the person down, ela adraba, but rather on the contrary, sheha adam yuchal, that the person will be successful and able, lif'ol aleha, b'davar hagashmi, to actually successfully elevate this physical thing, v'yavar, and to refine it, v'yale es hanitzot hamelubashbai, to be able to elevate the spark that is trapped inside the physicality. In order that he should be successful in his avodas habirurim, tzarich, he needs lif'ol tchila, to first start by chalishus klalis heim ba'atzmai, by bringing a general weakening onto himself. And what part of himself? Onto his animal self. Begufay uvenafshay habahamis, onto his body and his animal soul. We want that by the time we're engaging the physical world, the body is not screaming so loud that it's the only thing that's real and that the soul has no voice. It's completely overtaking everything, that we don't have the power to rise up above these challenges. So we want to activate what's a general weakening of the animal soul and the body. The hein begashmis v'chumrius ha'elam, and this is referring to the physicality, and chumrius means, there's a word. There is a word for chumrius versus gashmius.
It's not like a chumrah, like material.
Oh no, chumrah would be like something like strict.
Like physicality, materiality.
Materiality, right. Chumrius is talking about even more. Chumrius is the word chamor in it. Chamor is a donkey. Like, there's physicality and then there's like, materialism almost, right? Materiality, you said? I think materialism.
Yeah.
But good, this is the class where we make up words. Materialism, I think that's a good one. So within the physicality and the materialism of this world, this is the idea of the service of prayer. Sha'as krava, a time of battle. Shepayelis chalishus klolis, that activates a general weakening, beguf, in the body, v'nefesh habahamis, and the animal soul. This does not mean to say that we want our body to be physically weaker, but we want our body's urges and impulses to be quieter and not overtake everything to the point that we have no free choice and self-control to rise above the thing, whatever that thing is. L'hainu, this means, al yedei ha'hispainanus shelifnei tefillah, through a person meditating before davening, which looks like learning Chassidus usually, and thinking about God, v'acharkach, and then after that, al yedei ha'hispainanus be'esat tefillah gufa, through the meditation that comes at the time of davening specifically. What meditation? Ba'avodas ha'ofanim v'chayas ha'kodesh, when we meditate on the service of the different angels up in heaven that we read out yesterday in the Et Shemakel, the blessings before Shema. We talk about the service of the angels. When we truly think about these angels and how our animal soul actually comes from these angels and how that passion that we have within us is sourced in a passion for God, just like we can see with the angels. Shehem shayresh hanefesh habahamis, these angels are the source for the animal soul. She'al yedei, through these contemplations and meditations, payel chalishus klolis, this activates a general weakening, begufay v'nafshay habahamis, in his body and in his animal soul. Ubiderech memela, and then automatically, gam bechelka ba'olam, also in his portion of the world, all of the physical things that he confronts in his life, his material possessions, and the people he engages with, etc., he will be able to, they will have less of a hold on him. When he learns how to rein in those desires during prayer and meditate on something greater and bring in those impulses into the picture of holiness and out of the picture of unholiness, every material thing that's connected with him loses its power a little bit. That's what happens during prayer. And it's definitely something that I've seen. Not in a crazy dramatic way, but the days where I daven, again, my Jewish life, the things that God expects me to do come a little bit more naturally to me than when I haven't davened or when I don't daven. Like, it just seems harder. You start to question things a lot more, right? So I don't know if you've seen that, but It's definitely something that I have actually experienced. Okay. This is the reason that before davening, you're not supposed to eat, and to go and deal with all your needs, to go and make a business deal, and to go and take care of the bank appointment before you've davened. Yeah.
Can you drink water before you daven?
Okay, so the actual written down halacha is that you're not supposed to eat before davening. Chabad, and also women are, I think, a little bit different as well, but Chabad, even with men, there's the story that's the source of this idea is that Rebbitzin, now I'm not remembering which Rebbitzin it was. Rivka? Yeah, thank you. Rebbitzin Rivka was the Rebbe Maharash's wife, the fourth Lubavitch Rebbe's wife. She was ill, right? And the doctors told her that she needed to eat first thing in the morning. So once, was it her father that saw her?
Or her father-in-law.
Her father-in-law, the Tzemach Tzedek, the Rebbe Maharash's father, saw her. Thank you so much. This is really helpful. Everyone needs a handle. Saw her waking up super, super early in the morning and said, like, why are you doing this? You're not well. What are you doing? She said, no, I'm making sure to daven extra early because I need to eat first thing in the morning. So he told her, it's better to, okay, I'm not messing this up. It's better to, pardon? The Tzemach Tzedek, the third Lubavitcher Rebbe, told his daughter-in-law Rebbitzin Rivka, who is the wife of the fourth Rebbe and the mother of the fifth Rebbe, all connected here. He said, it's better to eat in order to pray than to pray in order to eat. Right? You eat so that you can pray. You can have the energy and the koach to pray and to focus on it. Than to pray just so you could finish praying and get to your food. So this story has been taken in the Chabad context of that. Men, okay, this, I don't think this applies to women, but also in Chabad, men don't wash their hands before davening. They don't eat bread. I did not know this until I got married. And so I kept making on Friday mornings like breakfast for my husband, and he's like, no, I have to first daven and before I can wash. And finally, it slowly started, but I don't think that that's relevant for women. You would have to check. Again, maybe Rabbi Bridowitz question, although it's a specific within Chabad custom. But they do eat mazonos, right? So they'll have some, eat, especially like on Shabbos morning when the day is very long. You first learn Chassidus, and then you daven, and then you eat very late. There is an idea to eat the mazonos in the morning, the Shabbos mazonos.
I remember the rabbi who used to teach me Chassidus in Moscow. He used to teach also in the yeshiva, and he used to walk around knocking everybody's room and like, mikvah mizonos Chassidus. Mikvah mizonos Chassidus. So I wake up and I'm like, not mikvah, but mizonos Chassidus, yes.
Not mikvah, but mizonos
Chassidus. Thanks, Tzedek, for that when I was doing this before that.
There you go.
I would not survive otherwise.
Right. So that's the idea. That's the idea, that it's that you want to come to your davening prepared. And that looks like for a man also mikvah every morning. Eating something. Every morning. Yes.
That's why when you see a bunch of men with towels on their shoulders, it's
Yes.
right.
Yes. Yes.
Wait, I thought there was a concept where you just say like the morning brachos and then you're able to eat.
Correct. Before eating anything or drinking, try to say the morning brachos. That is correct. First say the morning brachos, which takes probably 5 minutes. If you're Hebrews, you're still learning, maybe a little bit longer. And then eat and drink. And then Chassidus, meditations before davening, right? And then to daven.
And then
However,
grab and drink again.
And then grab and drink. Then you wash your hands, right? So there's something called pas shachris. It's referred to in the Gemara, pas shachris, the bread of shachris, the morning bread. After you daven, then you wash your hands and you have bread. And this is very, in Israeli culture, like, if you don't have bread, it's not considered a meal. Like, it's just, it's this ongoing, I call it argument, not fight, with me and my husband, that like, I'll have a smoothie, and he's like, that doesn't count as a meal. You need to have bread. Bread. And then he quotes the Gemara, pas shachris. And in the schools here, they call it pas shachris. I remember when I was in high school in Tzfas, and 10 a.m., usually like, that's snack time, right? 10 a.m. is a snack. Everyone pulled out a sandwich, okay? I was just like, why are you eating a sandwich at 10 a.m.? That's lunchtime. Like, no, lunchtime we eat chicken and rice and pas shachris. And that's what they would call it, pas shachris, the bread of shachris, the morning bread. That's after you've davened, you wash your hands and have bread. Pas means bread.
Oh, pas Yisrael?
Right, pas Yisrael. Yes. Things start to, I think it's spelled Pei Samach. Pas. Or with a taf?
No, like
with a taf?
Taf.
Pat Yisrael is with a taf?
Because like pita.
Ah. I never
Everybody
knew that.
needs a handle.
Everything's
Everybody
coming
needs a
together. Everything's coming together now.
Pat is with the top. I think.
Pat is with a taf, yes, you're
So,
right. Both a saf or a taf.
But
Pas
it's
Yisrael.
Pat Yisrael.
Sorry, so, broadly speaking, don't eat or drink before davening in the morning, but don't be davening to eat.
Okay.
So, like, is that...
Okay, so
you can
first
eat.
of all, I will start with the fact that these kind of, I don't want to call them nitty-gritties, but these laws pertaining to tefillah aren't as relevant for women. We do need to pray, but the logistics of prayer, the rules of prayer do look a little bit different for women than they do for men, specifically married women, especially with kids. Maybe when you're not married or have kids, you could be more strict with like trying to make sure to pray before the certain time, etc. But yeah, generally, eat something before davening. I think that can include washing for women, but we'd have to check.
what if I generally like don't eat breakfast right when I wake up?
If you really don't need it and like grosses you out to eat in the morning and you're nauseous, and then you're going to eat and be nauseous and then daven nauseous. No, but mostly people, especially if they're davening, let's say you finish davening by 10 a.m., they start to think about their food a lot while they're davening. Like, oh, let me finish this and get to breakfast. Start imagining breakfast, right? So the idea is better to eat and then daven without having to imagine breakfast on a full stomach. But obviously, this is not like a halacha that you can't go to davening if you haven't eaten yet. You need to be honest with yourself and see what's going to quiet down my animal soul, right? That's the idea when we have Farbrengens as well. It was the custom at Farbrengens, and it still is, that I think women know about this less. I've been to quite a few Farbrengens where there's just no food at women Farbrengens. Men Farbrengens, it's all about the food. Like they raise money. Have you seen this? Bachrim will like call you up and be like, can you sponsor my Farbrengen? Like, we need money for food for our Farbrengen. And the idea is that if we're going to sit around and talk about God and our relationship with God and get all into it, our animal soul needs to like be a little bit quiet. If we're sitting there with a rumbling stomach, it's very hard to remember about God. If your animal soul has all the delicious stuff in the world and their barbecues and all that, boys know how to Farbrengen that much better than girls in that respect, that's for sure. Yossi had a Farbrengen 2 nights ago for his birthday in the house, and I did not witness, I was sleeping, but apparently like 50, 60 people were in and out, and if you've been to my house, it's half the size, like the area is very small.
That's good.
But there was food. He came home before with bags and bags of stuff and made them like roasted potatoes in the oven and soup and 10 o'clock at night, 1 o'clock in the morning. You're eating and it's part of the experience, and it's because we want to bring our animal soul on board in these experiences. We don't want to just cut it off and be like, now we're talking about God. Yom Kippur, yes, you're right. Don't eat on Yom Kippur. That's a time where it's all about God and only about God, and we want to be like angels. But other times we want to make sure that our davening is successful. Let's put it that way. We want to make sure that our davening is successful because it really sets up our day. And in order for our davening to be successful, we need to acknowledge that we are human beings and not animals with desires and the need for food, and we get hungry and we get rumbling stomachs, and so that's why we eat before. But the reason why the general halacha, and by the way, this is something that a lot of non-Chabadics have an issue with Chabad. How can you eat before? The halacha says that you don't eat before, and it's like correct. Don't wash our hands before, but it's jealousy. So the halacha is that we don't eat before. Okay, and now when we think of eating in this context, we don't wash our hands, and when we think of that, men. Okay, so I hope this is all making sense. But what's the message here that the Rebbe is bringing for this idea that we don't eat before? Generally, we don't eat before davening. That before we engage with the physical world and elevate it, we want to first have daven. Oh, sorry. Oh, because I'm recording. That's why this is here. Let me just put this on silent. Okay. When I remember that it's recording, like my brain just stresses me out. That's why usually someone else does it. I don't even look, but okay. Hello, everyone. So we want to first daven so that when we do engage with the food and we do engage with the business and the money and the meetings and the all the things that come along with the challenges of our day, that we're fortified, that we're strengthened from our davening. And so that's why before going out and doing anything, we try to daven. Okay? there's a story with a Rebbitzin whose yahrzeit is tonight and tomorrow, right?
Yeah.
Tonight and tomorrow. The Rebbe's wife. Okay, I don't remember the names. Good morning. Hello. The Rebbe's wife once called up. She had like a phone, and there was a hookup in the yeshiva, and there was a boy who was a Chabad bacher, who was fast asleep, and the phone rang, and his friend picked up the phone. It was like a public phone for the whole yeshiva. Picked up the phone and said, "Hi, who's this?" Said, "It's Mrs. Schneerson. Can you please get so-and-so on the phone? I want to talk to him." It was a bit awkward because he had slept in. Okay, he wasn't up, the guy she was asking for. So he was like stuttering around, "Oh, well, yeah, I'll get him. So he came to the phone, he woke up. He was like, "The Rebbe is calling you." So he got up and he got to the phone and was like, trying to hide his, morning voice, like, "Hi." So she told him that she had an errand that she needed him to help her with. He was someone who had like helped the Rebbetzin out in Manhattan, that she wanted him to go and pick something up for her in Manhattan, some document. I was like, okay, amazing. So she said, "But I hear that you've woken up, and make sure to daven first. Make sure to daven first before you go." He was like, yeah, for sure, yeah. And he did not daven first because the Rebbetzin told him to do something. He ran and went to do it, and ended up getting all busy in Manhattan. And on his way back, on the train back, he saw the sunset. He was like, he had forgotten to put on tefillin before Shkia, because he was like, no, yeah, for sure, but he was so into. But the Rebbetzin realized that, she was like, make sure you daven first before going out and starting your day and getting caught up in all the things. Make sure that you daven first. So he shared that story. My husband heard it from him, and he shared that since then he never does anything, starts his day without first making sure to daven, doesn't go around. So that is actually just a story. So we'll put that out there. So he should not go. This is the reason why before davening we don't eat and drink and deal with all of our business needs and all of our needs. Because kaidem shapal chalishus klalis biatzmai. Before a person has had a general weakening over himself, the chelka ba'olam, and all of the things that are part of his world, yesh makam, there is place lachashosh, to fear, sheloizu bilvad, that not only, sorry, I forgot that we're sharing. sorry, totally forgot. Sheloizu bilvad, she'adayin lo yuchal, that he won't be able still, laha'alot et hadavar hagashmi, to elevate this physical thing, ela adara, but rather on the contrary, she'hadavar hagashmi, there's a fear that this physical thing, yayirid v'imshaych aysay lamata, will actually draw him down. Do you need help finding the place? Do you want me to show you where we are? Yeah, just show where we're up to. Amazing.
Which word will we have to do?
Lamata. Yayirid v'yimshaych aysay lamata. This making sense so far?
I mean, as it relates to davening, it's all making sense to me, but it's this is all a metaphor or an example of how we're supposed to be participating with the
with the Avodas HaBirur.
Yes. Okay.
Yes.
So
to remember the context.
I guess it's going to come up, but how that translates, I don't really get.
Okay. How that translates into the whole context of the mantra that we're talking about?
Well, into this idea of battling your animal soul and weakening your animal soul to face a challenge.
Mm-hmm. This is not talking about nisyonos.
No, I know, but like a regular or whatever. So is it basically saying you just need to be able to resist temptation and stay focused? Is that the idea?
The idea in this context, specifically of why it's being brought in, is to give us an example of what it looks like to engage with typical challenges, the challenges that come along with day-to-day life, which is to engage with them, to engage with the challenge, to face it head on, to fight it out, whatever. It's going to look very, very different depending on what the challenge is.
Okay, so this is an example of just
this is an example of engaging.
Where the challenge is our animal soul, and
the
we're
general,
engaging with it through prayer.
Yes.
Okay.
The general way that we engage with our animal soul is prayer, by speaking to the animal soul,
Yeah,
going
okay.
down, so to speak, to the animal soul's level and saying, how can I get you on board? Negotiating. That whole back and forth.
So it
Yeah.
isn't saying that like weakening the animal soul is like is the method of dealing with challenges, broadly speaking. Necessarily.
It's the idea that, broadly speaking, when we deal with challenges, it's in a way of engaging with them.
Okay.
And that before we engage with any challenge, we want to first be fortified in having engaged with our animal soul beforehand.
Okay.
So like think of like the challenge being you got to ride to the next city, okay? And like that's your destination and that's your goal. Before you like plan that out and go there and conquer the city, you first want to make sure your horse is on board with you to go there. So it takes you there. So that the whole way there, you're not like fighting with the horse and dragging it back and it throwing you off and coming back on.
Okay.
So the davening is like, get the horse on board, get your animal soul on board for this journey and challenge of your day, which is going to be confronting many physical things that you then need to elevate and refine and face. Sometimes through self-control, sometimes through showing how this too is for God, whatever that will look like.
Okay, so it's two things then. It's like, this is an example of how we engage with a challenging thing, and then also that having that set for the day gives you the resources to better face any other challenge.
Exactly, which
Okay.
which is step number 2 of facing
Okay.
the challenge as it comes. But that challenge too, you face it by again engaging with it.
Right.
But the fear of engaging with something, the which the Rebbe says, there's a fear here. The danger of actually engaging with something is that it might actually draw you down. Right? When you say I'm not engaging with you, then it hasn't, it can't draw you down, and okay, how do you elevate that? It's going to look different. But when you say, okay, I am going to engage with you, well, the animal soul is also very convincing sometimes. The physical world is very convincing. You're going to say, oh, I'm going to engage with you. I'm going to go to, I'm going to go to this college campus and convince all these students, while they're clubbing, that they should come to me for Shabbos, right? So like, that's amazing. You're going out there and you're speaking to the students. It's amazing. There is a fear in that maybe they'll convince you that actually you should stay clubbing with them and you shouldn't, right? So we need to be fortified before going out into those areas, because there's the danger that comes along with engaging with physicality, which is that the klipa might actually win out over the kedusha within that thing, because they're mixed together very, very strongly in a challenge. So that's why we first have to have this general fortification, so we can be successful. Because as Rebbe says, yesh makom lachshesh, there's place to fear, sheloizu bilvad, that not only will he not be able to elevate the spark, like, okay, I was unsuccessful, but actually that the thing he's engaging with will drag him down to its level. And we see this also with the fact that, like, before people went out for shlichus, which was like that, going out, and elevating and changing the world, that they first spent time in yeshivas, first spend time studying, right? The Rebbe was very into also that the first year after marriage that the husband should be in kollel. It's this idea of this, like, fortification and immersion, that first you have that immersion, so that when you go out into the world, you're more prepared for the challenges ahead. Okay. Let's see what we're up to. V'rak. And only. La'acharei avodas hatfilah, after the person has finished his prayers, ba seder ha'avodah de pas shachas, right? With that stuff, correct? Even ChatGPT knew not to put a tough in there, or a dot. Ba seder ha'avodah de pas shachas. Then comes the whole service of God, which is washing your hands and eating, etc. V'kol shar ha'inyanim, all of the rest of the things, hakshurim im avodas habirurim, that are connected with elevation, going to work, going to a meeting, working out, all of the things that include engaging with the physical world, we want to be fortified. You can absolutely work out before you daven. I'm saying, like, some people, if in order for them to have a clear mind in davening, need to first work out. So don't take these all as you're relating. I totally relate to that. So you need to look at these things also. We're not talking, the Rebbe's not giving us halachas over here. Okay, that before you engage with anything in your day, you have to first daven, but yeah. Okay, so just, these are general ideas, again, especially because we are women. So the laws pertaining to our davening do look a little bit different. Because after a person has had this general, what we call weakening, that's the beginning of the war. Yuchal laleches, he will be able to go v'lahamshich b'malchama habesa, and continue with the war of his house. Nahama apum charba lecho. I asked my husband what this means. It's from the Gemara. Nahama apum charba lecho means that you eat your food on the sword, which is the idea that there's no time to rest. There's no time to just sit back. That living in this life includes many challenges and confrontations with the world around us, and that we need to be prepared. And that once we've davened, we're prepared to go out and do this successfully. La'asoik b'voror ha'inyanim hagashmim, to engage with elevating, refining all the physical things around us. V'hine, tchilas avodas habirurim, we see that the beginning of this refinement process, shehi ba'avodas hatfila kaniskal al, which happens during prayer, as we mentioned, he ba'ofen shel hisbaininus v'chulei, it's by meditating on God, etc. But tam hadavar, the reason for this is lefi, because what we mentioned previously in the previous paragraph, shehanitzut shebadvarim, that the spark within these things, hamisbarim, that the person is refining, hein ba'ofen, they exist in a way, shegam milvad etzem mitziyusam. So aside from the fact that God exists there, nisharu bahem gam kol shara inyanim, also basically the light of God remains there as well. Shehein inyan shel or v'kedusha. This is the idea of light and holiness. This is going back now to what we said previously. The reason we engage with the challenge is the way we do. Head on, confronting it in a way of war, battle, negotiating, giving it legitimacy, is because it does have legitimacy. It has a spark of God that doesn't just exist there, but that shines. There's light within this thing. And so that's the reason why we engage the way we just described. You can actually play out a war, okay? A war doesn't mean a bloody battle, but it means a give and take, a back and forth. Okay? If you're going to fight with someone, you have to take a look at their army and at their weapons and look at what they've got and consider them as existing so that you can then go and successfully fight the war, right? But derech shakla v'tari, in a way of back and forth, of negotiation, time of a minor, questions and answers, ad sheyafil bahem birur v'aliyah, until you can be successful in refining and elevating this thing. Okay? So this is all now an example and a description of the way that we engage in Avodas HaBirurim based on the fact that we know that in Avodas HaBirurim there is a spark of God, and that spark of God exists in a way of shining. It's shining, it's just covered over. We want to engage with it and negotiate it correctly, smartly, so that we can win that battle. That makes sense? Okay. Now we're getting back to Nisyonos. Masha'en ken. Masha'en ken means this is not the case. Or like on the other hand. But Masha'en ken would be this is not the case. But Avodas HaNisyonos, when it comes to the service of tests. Kevan, since Shehanitzutz Dekdusha Shebanisayan, the spark of holiness within the test, who ba'ofen exists in a way, Shechaticha Atzma Nasis Nevela. Remember what this term refers to? Chaticha Atzma Nasis Nevela. The Rebbe brought it in the paragraph describing the way that the spark in the Nisayan exists. The piece of meat, Chaticha Atzma, the piece itself, Nasis Nevela, became treif, became non-kosher. That spark of God became totally consumed and swallowed up in the darkness. It's there, God exists within the challenge, but only in a concealed way. There's no light, there's no sparkly object going on at the bottom. So because it exists in a way of Chaticha Atzma Nasis Nevela, that piece has become non-kosher, that spark has become totally dark. Shehanitzutz Atzma Nasis Chashuk, that spark has become totally dark. Like in comparison, the darkness that exists in the Gimel Klippas Atmeis. The Gimel Klippas Atmeis is talking about all of the physical things around us that God has said, the spark of God is so trapped there, don't engage with it. It's too trapped, it's asur. Asur means it's tied down. It's not allowed, and it's tied down. Don't engage with it. So the Rebbe is saying it's not exactly the same, because within Gimel Klippas Atmeis there actually is light, but it's very trapped. But lahavdil, bless you. Lahavdil means to compare. To compare it to that, but it's not exactly the same thing. Azay then, We cannot go in a way of war and in a way of negotiation. Everything that we described above does not work when it comes to Nisayan. Because in Nisayan, the spark of God is trapped and totally dark. Kevan since she'ein loy achiza klal. Okay, this is the term. Achiza means grabbing onto. There's nothing to hold onto. B'ma lahatchil hamilchama. With what to start the war. And again, this is the idea now, actually, of we don't negotiate with terrorists, right? There's nothing to hold on to. There's nothing good that we can work with, and therefore we do not negotiate. The way that we confront total evil and darkness looks very different than the way that we confront a mixture of good and evil, where there is the possibility to leave behind the evil, overcome it, and elevate the spark. So there's nothing to hold on to, because that spark of God is completely dark. We can't access it, hold on to that, and focus on it. And therefore, we don't engage with it the same way we engage with the rest of the things in the world. Ella, rather, how do we then engage with it? Eifan ha'avaida, the way that we work with this challenge, with this test of a nisayon, hu al yadei his ayarus taikef atzmi v'bitul atzmi. It's by awakening the strength within ourselves and the spark of God within ourselves, as it says here, she'i efshar belav kei, because then it is no other way. Okay, so umochrach, he is forced la'amay b'nisayon, to withstand this test. Ki ein derech acheres lefanov, there's no other way in front of him. So the Alter Rebbe in Tanya talks about Mesiras Nefesh, and he uses this term, she'i efshar belav hachi. She'i efshar belav, I think it's supposed to say hachi with a hey, belav hachi. That it's impossible for it to be any other way. The Alter Rebbe describes a situation, a unique situation, which is in Nisayan in Tanya, where a Jew is pushed into a corner and basically told, choose, and this is not just the only example of a Nisayan, but this is one of them, die or bow down to this idol publicly, disavow God and say you don't believe in this stuff, and these are your two choices, okay? The Alter Rebbe says that that's an example where a Jew has an opportunity for Mesiras Nefesh. Mesiras Nefesh means to literally give over my soul for God, to say, no, I will not cut off my relationship with God. I will stick with it no matter what the cost. The Alter Rebbe then says that a Jew almost loses their free choice in that moment. Because when a Jew is pushed into the corner so totally like that, and is facing total evil, like no other choice, okay? What happens is that awakens within the Jew the part of him that's connected with God, not that has a relationship with God, but that actually is God. Was anyone here when we broke down the levels of the soul at the beginning of the year? Mm-hmm. We did that this year, right? Yeah. We spoke about the fact that our soul has layers, right? Just like God, so to speak, has layers. There's God, and there's the different ways he expresses himself. We too, we have us. There's our us as we are in our essence, and then there's all the different ways we express ourselves, which would look like the nefesh. The nefesh, again, is like the physical life within us, right? The ruach, the emotional world. The neshama, the intellectual world, our intellectual capabilities. The chaya, which would be more like our subconscious and our desires that are manipulating things behind the scenes. And then there's the yechida. The yachid means literally one. It's the part of us that doesn't connect with God and have a relationship with God. It's the part of us that is God. Chelek elokam imal mamash. Right? The Alter Rebbe adds the word mamash, literally. That our soul is a piece of God, literally. It's not like a metaphor. It's actually a piece of God within us. Now, when a Jew faces a nisayon, when a Jew faces a test where it's an impossibility, there's nothing they can grab onto and hold on to and say, okay, this is how I can make sense of it. This is how I can make it work, right? A Jew in Soviet Union, like, oh, you know what? I'll go to work and I'll send my kids to the communist school, and then when they come home, I'll make sure to. It was impossible. It was like the options in front of them were live as a Jew, which meant to give up your life to some extent, or to give that all up. So when a Jew is faced with that impossibility, there's nothing to negotiate and work with over here, they then turn inward. Okay, and they don't turn inward to the level of their neshama, let's say, to their intellectual capacities of how can I sit down and logically figure this out and write down a pros and cons list, right? Or how can I touch, like, what do I want? What doesn't make sense? What do I want? How can I touch, like, what's good for my physical well-being? None of that plays out here because none of it makes sense in those contexts, in those terms. So where do they turn to? Their yechida. That elicits and draws out of the person the part of themselves which is one with God. And so this idea of it's impossible to be any other way, when this part of the Jew is revealed and brought forth, there is no other option other than to choose God, because that part of them is God. It can't fight itself. It can't choose an option that is outside of it. And so the part of God, and this the Rebbe is going to elaborate in the next paragraph, okay? So that's where we're going. Today is Wednesday, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So tomorrow we do not have class. How is it Wednesday? When does this happen? So on Sunday, we're going to elaborate on this. The Rebbe is going to talk about the Yechida. But just so we can understand this, so you know what? Let's finish reading inside, just this paragraph, and then we'll make sure to elaborate on this so we don't end right in the middle. So, the way that the person engages with something that's totally black and dark is not by engaging with it, it's by turning inward. And not just turning inward, but to turn to the depth of who he is and awaken his inner strength, to the point that it's just, there is no other way. He's forced to withstand this test. It's the brick wall, there's nothing in front of him. There's no way to get around it, except to just awaken an incredible strength within himself and totally shatter the wall. The kevan sha'avayda sai, he mitzad ha'toike fa'atzmi v'bitl ha'atzmi, and since he goes about this service in this way of eliciting the deepest part within himself that's one with God, hainu, this means, loy mitzad inyonei hispashtus ha'aretz v'giloim, he doesn't connect with the parts of himself that are just expressions of his soul, his intellect, his physical body, his desires. Avoda al pitam v'das, logical service of God, what makes sense in his mind. Elo mitzad ha'etzem, but rather he connects with the essence. Hine mitzad ha'etzem, because from the perspective of his essence, v'yecholtai lahaitzi es hanitzutz, it enables him to extract the spark hamalubash b'davar hu hanisayon, that's become totally black in the form of a nisayon. Kiven shegam benitzutz, since also in the spark nishar ha'etzem b'shlemus, the essence retains its wholeness. It doesn't shine, there's no light, but when he connects with his etzem, he can extract the etzem of God that exists within that nisayon as well. Okay, and this we will elaborate on Bezrat Hashem next week. We're going to talk about the Yechida. We're going to talk about this part of us that is one with God and what that means and what that looks like, and why in a test that enables us to access that and how that actually forces the challenge to become a non-challenge. You good? Yeah? Okay. So we'll continue with this Bezrat Hashem next week. Have a beautiful, beautiful Shabbos and a beautiful Chof B'Shvat. Tonight is the yahrzeit, the day of passing of the Rebbe's wife. It's in Chayamushka. And so I hope that do you guys have like a program or something? Yeah? Beautiful. You can connect with that.
Do you
It's
have
very
a lead
special.
for bring-ins with us?
You can ask with Gamaga to set it up. I'm happy to, if you want to. Okay. I'm more than happy
Your
to.
phone.
My phone is recording.
She's recording. Okay, so, oh gosh.